My name is Sherry List. I'm working as Azure Developer Technical Lead at Microsoft. I'm based in Copenhagen. And apart from my daily job, I have a big tendency to make myself involved in a lot of different community projects. I listed some of them here. So I'm one of the organizers of Angular Copenhagen meetup. And any of you ever heard of NG Vikings conference? Few of them. Okay, that's great. And NG Spain? Yeah, the same people. Okay, great. So both of these conferences are, the beauty of them is that they all are non-profit and the result of collaboration among all the meetup organizers. NG Copenhagen is happening for the third time in Copenhagen this May. And NG Spain is happening for the very first time in Madrid in October. Okay, and then the other thing that I listed here is Hack Your Future. I was so happy to hear that actually there are some other community projects here that helping refugees, because Hack Your Future is also doing the same. Hack Your Future started in Amsterdam, and what we do there is that we are helping refugees to get into the job market as a front-end developer. I'm the vice chairwoman of the Copenhagen chapter, and it's happening around the world, many different countries. And then in 2018, I can proudly announce that we could get actually for 25 of our graduates full-time job as a front-end developer, which I think that it is a very big achievement. And in 2019, we want to actually increase that number. So the reason I put it here is that I really want you all go and find all of these different projects that, for example, that they mentioned it here, that you have it in Greek as well. Because what you can do is that you can really make a change in somebody's life, which is very valuable. Okay, enough about that and me. So let's just start with a presentation. Since we are here, we all know that what Angular component is, but we are going to have a very quick overview about that, and then the part that what is good, and then what is missing. After that, we are going to have a brief overview of web components, and then we can find out that how we can create web component easily with Angular elements. And later on, we are going to find out that what are the other projects that we should have track of, and what's the next step for us in the Angular world to do. In 2013, Facebook introduced component-based architecture in React, and then quickly after that, other frameworks such as Angular adopted it. And we all know that actually what the components are, that is they are trying to help us to apply separation of concern in front end. So as a result of that, we can create our application in a smaller portion that is called component, and then each of these components, they can be easily maintainable. And as you could see that in the previous slide, that how you can easily also test them. And then you know that in most of the time that what we do is that we are actually trying to make them reusable as well. For example, in this slide, you can see that we have that card, for example, we can create it once and then reuse it as many times that we want. So since we all know that what components are, I'm not going to actually explain you more about that. But yes, these are the components. These are great, but there are still some stuff missing here. For example, style encapsulation. I'm pretty sure many of you have been in a situation that you created an element and everything was good. You committed your code in the GitHub, and then all of a sudden you see that your component doesn't behave the same. Why? Because somebody else committed something in the global CSS and all is gone. So we've been there, we know that it's painful, and there are ways to actually prevent it, such as the different naming convention, but this is not enough. What we want to achieve is that to create a component that behave the same no matter what happens in the global CSS. The other thing is that even though we are having that encapsulation, but we still want to be able to customize it. For example, that card that I show, that maybe in one of the projects that I want to have the different background, I wanted to have a specific behavior when you have hover on it. So we want to have it encapsulated, but we also want to customize it. So with the current component, Angular components, we cannot achieve it in an easy way. The other thing is that in many of the bigger companies nowadays, that each team, they are using different framework. One team using React, one team is using Angular, and one team is using Vue. And then let's say that all of our application has a logging form. So why we should recreate all of these logging forms which look the same, behave the same, one time in Angular, one time in React, and one time in Vue. So this is not optimal. The last one is that most of you know what JSX is. So it's cool, but maybe it's not the best actually solution, but it solved the templating issue. And but in Angular world, we don't have such a solution. So we can create our own templating, but that's also not so optimal. So we don't want to have many different templating projects. So what we are missing in Angular is such a flexibility, like JSX as well. Angular doesn't have it, if React doesn't have it, if Vue doesn't have it, what has it? Web component. So web component is actually providing all of these missing bits and pieces that I told you in the previous slide. So what it does is that it actually creates, allow you to create a component that is going to behave the same no matter if it's Angular, in Vue, and React. It provides you all of those encapsulation and also let you to actually customize it as well. And because the way that it works is using the browser capability, it also brings you a lot of really kind of the flexibility and the speed and all of those things in the Vue that I'm going to actually show you in later, that how it actually helps you to do that. I talk about the frameworks. So Rob Dodson from Polymer team, he has many awesome projects, but one of them is the custom elements everywhere. If you go there and check out, you can see that which framework supported until actually what part of it. Angular totally supported, since Angular, if I remember right, Angular 6, that is fully supported web components. React is also almost there, Vue supported fully. So frameworks are ready. But there are some missing bits still in React as well. So if you go and check it out, you know that what are the status of them, and then they are also providing you that how you can actually fix those problems, so you can use it in all the different framework as well. Yeah, as I mentioned, that Angular is fully supporting it, so we don't have any problem there. So let's see that what is actually web component. It's pretty simple. It consists of these three technologies: HTML template, custom elements, and Shadow DOM. Previously, HTML import was also part of it, but with the ES6 module, we don't need actually HTML import anymore. And the reason that I listed that HTML import here, because if you go and check out a lot of articles which is out there, still they are referring to that HTML import. And if you see it there, then you know that that's outdated, because web components is actually developing pretty fast. You should really you should make sure that you don't read some specification which is outdated. So this is one of them. So let's find out what HTML template is. The big deal about it is that browsers, you can actually put any template there, and then browser, when it come and look at anything which is between the template tag, is going to ignore it. And what you need to do, you need to use JavaScript to load that bit there. And the reason, actually, the good thing about it, that you can have one template and add anything that you want to it. I mean, you can clone it as many times as you want, but the browser is not going to parse it again. So each time that you clone, you neither call JavaScript, and also you don't need to manipulate the DOM either. So in this way, you are going to gain a lot of performance already. So let's see how we can actually use it. In order to do that, we are going to create this very beautiful strawberry history page. And these cards that you can see here, we are going to create a web component step by step by applying this simple card there. And by the way, in my presentation, you will see either Stackblitz or GitHub logo there. And whenever that you click there, you can see the full code of that there. I'm going to share it later with you. This is our template. As I mentioned you, that this is a simple template tag. It has a start, it has an end, and this our actual template is between these to div. So it's pretty simple, as you can see. How to use it? First of all, we need to create a placeholder because, by the way, right now we are not using Angular or anything. This is pure HTML and JavaScript. This is a placeholder for the component that we are going to create to add it later here. So what we need to do is that we need to first of all have a reference to our template, and then we are going to add the image to the placeholder for the image in our template, or just simply like that. And then later on, what we are going to do that is we are going to add the description for the image. So this is pretty easy, as you can see. Later on, we are going to have a reference to the placeholder that we are going to add our component there. And this is all the magic. We are going to clone the template that we created. After we clone the template, we are going to append it to the DOM. With this 3 line, we already use the HTML template. So by this 3 line, we already achieved a lot of performance for our code because we are going to, as I told you that, we are not going to manipulating the DOM. We are just cloning and added that. Then we just did it. So as I told you that, the template is going to help you to just clone and append it to the DOM, and then it's fast and so easy to use. So that was just a template. So the next one is a custom element. So with the custom element, we are going to either able to create a new tag, like the component that we create in Angular, or we are going to extend an existing tag. For example, we can extend an A tag, like the directive in Angular that we can have, for example, a structure directive. So we have an A tag, but it has an attribute as well, so we can achieve that. And the difference with the normal component is that we are just creating a normal tags, not an Angular tag. It's going to be the browser's language. That's what the magic of Angular component is. One thing is that, as we know, that we should remember to have a unique name with the current specification that we have. Why? Because browser can get confused. If you create a red button, and there will be 10 other red buttons, you are not sure that it's going to use your red button. So try to come up with some unique idea for now. A Polymer team are working on the HTML modules. In that, after the HTML module is there, then we don't need to be careful about that. But for now, try to come up with some unique name. And then the other thing is that try to also remember to, even though that you have a unique name and then unique attribute name, try to not be so creative either, because you want to create an element, some component that some other developers are going to use it. So if you have a title, have an attribute called title. Don't have X, Y, Z that nobody knows what it is. So the other thing that I wanted to mention you, that all of these custom elements, they are simple ES6 modules. So they have a life cycle. Actually, this table, it shows you that compare this life cycle hood of the normal component with what we have in Angular and what is in React and what is in New. So we all know that what actually that ng-on-init when it's going to be loaded. So ng-on-init is going to be loaded as soon as that your component is actually initiated. And then we have connected callback, which is comparable with ng after connected check. So which means that as soon as your DOM, your component is attached to the DOM, this callback is going to be triggered. And then, of course, we have the disconnected callback, which is like ng-destroy when it's been removed from your DOM. And then we have attribute change callback, like the ng-on-changes. So with this, we already can find out that the connected callback is the best place to actually to clone your template. For example, to attach the image, to attach the description, and all of those things to your component. And then an attribute change callback, just like ng-on-change, we need to be aware of reacting to all of those changes that it goes to your component. So let's see how we can use these ones. This is what we are going to create. Very unique BB-red strawberry. This is a joke that if you know that I normally give this talk with my friend Anna, and I'm Sherry Berry, and she's Anna Banana, and this BB is representative of us, so Berry Banana. And then this component has 2 inputs. One is IMG for the image of the the card, and then the description is what we are going to display there. First, we need to create a class. So we all know that how to create a class. So we are going to call super to have access to our parent one, to all the API that the parent has. And you normally don't need to add the super key because it's going to be implicit, but I put it here to just to represent that why we need that, because most of the time when we are just creating Angular, we do some stuff, but we don't know that what's happening in the background. So we extended the HTML element, and with super, we have access to all of the HTML element ones. So this is a class that we created. And the only thing that we need to do is that we should call custom element, and then the BB red strawberry element is the name of the class that we just created. With just these two, we created a custom element. That's it. What we need to do, we also need to have manipulate our template as well to do something. So let's see how we do that. As I told you that connected callback is the best place to have the reference to the template. So what we do here, that we just exactly the same thing that we did before. In that template, we have a reference to the element, we have the reference to the placeholder, and then I created the render function to just did whatever that we did before, to just say that, oh, this is our image, this is our description, so we have it there. So it's the same thing that we did it before. And then, as I mentioned you before, that in attribute change callback, we need to react to any of those changes that we have to the input. And remember here, we don't have any framework. If you're working with Angular, you don't need to take care of it on your own. Normally, Angular does it on your own unless that is something necessary. But here, you have to do it on your own. So we have our image, we have our description, we added to the DOM, and then we reacted to all the changes as well. This is the result. So we just created a web component. So as you can see that it looked as we wanted to have, but you can see that we have a lot of this div soup here. But still it looks good. So let's see that what will happen next. Oh, our doggy is not happy. What's happened? Because if we have a global CSS and we happen to have a p tag, and then all of a sudden we want to have our description on top is going to be red, so everything is going to be red. So that style encapsulation that I was talking about is missing. So how to fix that one? With Shadow DOM. Shadow DOM, I really love this, this diagram here is not made by me. The reference is there, but I really like the way that it explains everything. Shadow DOM is creating that boundary around your component. So then it makes sure that all of your code is totally safe there, unless you really want to change it. Let's see that how we can apply the Shadow DOM. Inside our class, what we need to do, we need to just say that I want to have a Shadow DOM with the mode open, so it means that I can actually add something to it on my own as well. And then when we clone our template, this time, instead of attaching to the DOM, we just attach the Shadow DOM that we have. So these two lines, it actually is create that boundary that you wanted. And with Shadow DOM, what we have is also a slot. What a slot is, that is going to create a placeholder for you that you can add something later to it. Any of you know that what the content projection is in Angular? So content projection is going to let you to create a component, but also let developers to add some DOM to it. For example, most of you created the tab in Angular material. So you can have your chunk of HTML inside there. So you say that this is my tab, this is the content to it. So this is the same technology. So it allows you to add some customized HTML there. So let's see how we can use it in reality. Inside the template, don't ask me why, but just because of the sake of using a slot, we decided to create a placeholder for the title and placeholder for the description. Instead of adding it as an input, so we want to let developers to just do it in the way that they want to. So when we are going to use our component now, we can have a div with a slot named title, which is, you see that here, my slots, they have name. So one is name title, the other one is description. If you have one slot, you don't need to give a name. But if you have more than one, in order to not be confused, then you need to have a name. So you can say that div slot title, just pass this strawberries as italic, and then the description, just pass this. But the good thing is that you can have a component, you can pass another custom element inside this slot in order to orchestrate your page. So this is the way that we created it. So you can see that this was pretty easy. You didn't need even to have any JavaScript or anything. And then it also comes with the custom CSS properties. So custom CSS properties is one of those ways that allows you to customize your custom element inside the shadow DOM. Basically, it has nothing technically to do with the custom element. You can try it in the other ways as well, but I'm going to show you how. So again, back to here, we have an element, one of these child one. We want to, let's say that give a background red to it. So how we can do it? Inside our style, in the template, what we can do, we can create the background dash color and use the CSS variable. With the CSS variable, we have a naming convention that your variable needs to start with dash dash. So in this case, we have a background color, and we created a variable called dash dash background color and give a default value of white. And later on, inside our web component, what we can do, we can use the style variable here and say that, remember that we have that dash dash background dash color. Now I want to pass this color to it. So you can see it's pretty easy. But remember the documentation. We all know that it's really good to create a documentation, because if you give all of this flexibility inside your component and you don't talk about it, nobody knows. And the other thing, we have host. And this is also, you might know it from Angular Word as well, with a host binding. What it does, that you can, inside your CSS, you can have the column host with the name of your component, and then put everything that you wanted to apply to your element there. And in that way, you can remove one of those divs from your div soup. So we achieved the same thing. And as you can hopefully see, we have a shadow root also here. And we remove one of the div as well, because we use the host as well. As you can see that we could have the default one without passing any background color. It is white, but if you pass this color, then it's going to be red as well. So the dog is also happy, is relieved, because if we do the same thing, the red, then it's only the paragraph on top is red. So our custom element is totally encapsulated. Ta-da, we did it. So now we all created a web component together. How about Angular? Then how can we do that with Angular? So we use the same tooling, we use the same technology that we know. With Angular element, we can do that. Of course, we all know that we need to create a CLI, and then we need to create a project, and then we go to the project, and then we just do ng add Angular/element. So Angular is going to create that for us. And then we also need to add the web component custom element in order to have all the polyfills, because not all the browsers fully support it. Most probably many of you has a pain of supporting the I11 still as well. I did it, I worked at a bank before, so we always have to do it. So you need to install that one as well. And then what you need to do in the polyfill.ts, you need to import that polyfills as well. And you need to change the target in the TS config to ES 2015. So for the browsers that they already use they already support web component, we need to do that. Otherwise, it will fail with the conflict of having polyfill and this one as well. And then we are going to create a normal component together. And of course, this is going to be the result. So we have a component now. So what we are going to do together now is that we're creating the same component as we did before now with Angular. I'm going to show you that this for 2 seconds we are going to have it. And if we look back, what we had the kind of, this was our class. So we had a class and then we had the shadow DOM, and then we created the custom element. So in order to attach the shadow DOM, what we need to do in our Angular component, we need to use the view encapsulation. With the view encapsulation, we can just do the view encapsulation.shadow DOM. So it does all of those things for us. That's it. And then what we need to do is that we are bringing the component, the template that we created before here. We just copy and paste that one. So what I did here, that I only took the advantage of the data binding. So everything is the same. I just have the IMG title and description there. And then, of course, since we had here the component allows us with the TypeScript, we could just do the checking that if it doesn't exist, we give them the default value. In the other one, I had to take care of it manually on my own. And then one thing is that because by default the display block is inline, in order to make sure that it behaves the same, we need to remember to make it block. The last part is that as we know that we created a component, we have to attach it to the ng module, so it knows that what is there. So we are going to the app.module. By the way, one thing I forgot to mention here. Now we are creating an Angular element project. So this card is the only module, the only thing that we have in this project, because our goal is that to create this module and then use it in another project as well. So in order to do that, to tell Angular that I only have one component here, I should go and change the entry component to card component. So it knows that there is no app.component and all of those things. We have only one component here. And that's the way that to do it. To enter a component, the name of your component. And if we look back, the only part which is missing is defining the custom element name. So the way to do it in Angular is going to be that inside the app.module, what we need to do is that we need to say that, okay, create a custom element create custom element comes from the Angular element. So create custom element, the name of component, and then I also have the injector there. So then we can later on inject the other thing to it, because now we have a project which has only one component. And then we can again say that custom.element.define and the name of component and the name of custom element that we want to have. So this is the same if you want to just put it next to each other. So it's almost the same. And then we have to do it, bootstrap it manually because we changed the entry component. That's the way that Angular supports it for now. And we do the ng build, and then we have it. So you can see that we created this component in no time, and it's fully custom element. So it's a total web component that we created it with the tools that we have. If we want to do the testing and all of those things, we know how to do it here. Okay. This is great. The dog is super happy because now it could even use the Angular to create the custom element that it wanted to. But there is always a but. Life is not so happy. What we created here, we created an Angular project with all of this. We built an Angular project. But we don't want to build an Angular project. Imagine that if you want to use this component in another Angular project, which happen to have 10 other, let's say, 10 other custom elements in this way there, you are going to inject 11 times Angular there. So that's what we don't want to do it. So the build at the moment is a little bit challenging because we still don't have the full support for it yet. So we have a very huge bundle size. We don't have one other thing is that in this way, if by default, Angular gives you a 2 bundle. One is for your project, one is for all the libraries that you have. And if you want to import it in another project, it's going to be challenging. There are ways to do it, but not so easy way to do. And because you have to normally eject your Webpack config and then take care of it there. We really don't want to go to that way because I personally want to always have Angular to take care of everything for me. So you can say that the build is a little bit complicated. thanks to a very good friend, Manfred Asaya, that he created this really cool project, which is called NGX Build Plus. First of all, it allows you to have one bundle size, but as I told you, that we don't want to have Angular 11 times there. So it allows you to remove all of those common libraries from there. And in the runtime, you can eject it only one time. So no matter if you have 20 of them, at the end, you are going to have one Angular there, or you're going to have one-time Angular element there. And then the other good thing is that since he's working for Angular team now, that we know that soon we are going to have this as a standard as a part of the Angular. Yes, it's super awesome, this library. And I mentioned that with this, it uses schematics, so it extends the CLI. We are not going to do something funky there. We can still have all of the ng build, ng serve, and everything there. No need to eject. And it builds a single bundle and allow you to run, to inject your common one at the universal module. How to do it? So first of all, we need to do the ng add, the ngx build plus. And then inside your Angular JSON, you need to change the default builder to be ngx build plus. From now on, whenever that you add ng build, is going to run for you ngx build plus, the column build. And then these are the common modules that I told you. Normally inside, when you create an Angular project, you're going to have RxJS, you're going to have ng core, ng component, and all of those things. So on the project, they have these. So you can create a file called webpack.extra.js and list all of these here. Then ngx build plus knows that these are the common one. When it wants to build it, it's going to remove it for you. And then later you can add it in your master project. Once you created that, these are the one that, this is the way to build your project. So you can see it's pretty normal. It's ng build, so you can have the production mode, which comes from the Angular CLI. And then you can say that use that webpack extra and remove this from my bundle side. And then you want to say that I want to have single bundle as well. And you can add a couple of other things that you can check it from the documentation. There are more flags that you can use it. Now our component is ready. Now we could finally build a proper web component here. And we all know that Ivy is going to solve all of our problems. So it's going to shrink our, if we use it properly, it's going to shrink the bundle size for us. And then it's going to give us a lot of flexibility in order to create an Angular element in future. And hopefully we are going to have soon a proper kind of that way to build it from the CLI as well. Even we don't need to add the ngx build plus to it. Now that we have it, how to use it? Inside any other Angular project that you have, you can do the npm install web component / custom element. So we know that we have the polyfills. We know that we have to go and add the polyfill, import it to that polyfill TS. And this is one thing you have to remember. You need to go and say that inside the app.module.ts, you need to go to tell the ng module that I'm going to have some component that it sounds like a component, the Angular component, but it's going to be custom elements. Because otherwise, you can just call your component and it's going to try to look for a component inside your ng module, and it doesn't exist, and it's going to give you error, even though that is a fully web component there. So with this one, then it's going to be a fallback as well. It's going to see that, is it a web component or not? So remember this one. And then anywhere in any of your module, after on, you can just import it and just use it in the way that you want to. So this is one way to just use it, but you can just use it in anywhere. And this doesn't need to be an Angular component. It can be a Vue component, it can be a React component, it can be anything. You can just import it and then use the custom element that you want inside your project, and it will work. So now you can see that we could create it. We could actually use this is another project that I created. The source code is in GitHub. So then I created these custom elements in somewhere else, and I imported it and I used it here. So How about the communication? Because we all know that we want to have some web component in the middle of other Angular component that we have. How we pass the data to it, how we get the event out of it, how we do that. It's just a one-way data flow because it's just going to be like any other component that you have. So let's say that we have a leaf component there, which is going to be that a button, and inside your button, no matter if it's a web component or not, you always have an output because you are going to trigger an event just like any Angular component as well. So that event, you're going to pass it on to the parent one, even that one is going to pass it to the other one, and something will happen, and all of them that they are listening to that one are going to get an event. So I didn't teach you anything because you knew already this one. And the reason is that because your component is just going to be like any other Angular component that you have. You don't need to be worried about that. As we all know that, the event is going to be up and then data is going to be done, just like any other component. This is another project that I created it. So even inside, so this is a web component. This button is web component that we use it in the different way. And this is also web component. And I didn't need to do any single extra work in order to make these things to talk to each other. What we find out together today is that we found out that what is web component. And we created a web component together. And then we created a web component with Angular. And then we find out that we can just easily communicate between these components. And we found that it's a little bit challenging, but we can still build an Angular element together. And we can just add it anywhere. Do you think that web component works? In my opinion, it does. Because what it does is going to solve us a lot of problems that we are especially in the as I told you that in the bigger companies that we are having all of these different projects in different languages, and we always create more and more of those common libraries that we have to maintain in 5 different projects, 5 different teams. Now we can create one and reuse it anywhere. And we can use the same tooling that we have. For example, in Angular, in React, and all of those, it also provides you a lot of tooling to create a component. And there are a lot of success stories out there. One of my very favorite one is Ionic. That Ionic, we all knew that in Angular world, because it has started with going to support only Angular. But what Ionic team they did, they created something which is really cool, and I really encourage you to go and use it. It's called Stencil.js. That allows you to create web component in a very simple way. So Ionic team uses Stencil.js, converted all of the components that they had to a web component, and as a result of that, now we have Ionic with React, Ionic with Vue, and all of those things. You can see that it works. It works everywhere. And the other thing is that I mentioned that I used to work at a bank. So a lot of bigger companies, even the conservative financial companies, also nowadays adopting the web component as well, ING as well. So in Nordea that I was working, now we could create that common libraries that is using the Nordea's branding, and everywhere they can use that one. So there is a team taking care of that, and no need to have 10, 20 different projects across the companies. So it works. And the browsers are also ready. The browsers are adopting that. And there was some problem with Edge, but I don't know if you heard the news that Edge is a further, at Microsoft, we forked Chromium, and then the new version of Edge is based on Chromium. And I don't know if you know that HTML5 test, if you go there, it actually tests and show you that the current browser that you're using, what are the stuff that it supports. So you can see that Edge now supports all of these things there. So you can go and actually download it and then use it and see that it also works there. So no reason to not use web component, in my opinion. Okay, what's next? So now we know that web component works, we know how to create it, what's next? One of the projects that I really want you to go and check it out is called lit-HTML. What lit-HTML is going to help you to create web component even easier. What you need to do is that you need to use that render HTML, And then, as you can just see that you have the same ES6 module that I showed you before. The magic here is that it provides you that JSX that I told you that is missing there. We don't have it in Angular. We don't have it in Vue. So you can have that one here inside the render. Your template is going to be an HTML literal. So you can have all of those data binding that you can do. You have it today at JSX. You can also use it here, but the difference is the way that virtual DOM is working. Whenever that a node change, it re-render the whole DOM. But what this one does, it re-render only the part of the component that you need to do, which is very powerful. So this is a way that I created this one. So you can go and check the code later on to see that how that one works. The other project that I want to mention here is called lit element. So lit element use actually the lit HTML in background, and it gives you even more flexibility to use it. So what it does, that it also going to help you. For example, I mentioned that if you want to create your own web component without a framework, you need to take care of that, reacting to the changes and all of those things. So lit element also bring that one to you. So it's going to be even easier to create a web component. This is the part that we can see that my whole component is only going to be this one. So I'm going to use the kind of that define an input here as well. So just like the Angular, we can have that static get and then bring this one. We can use TypeScript here. So it's going to be exactly like the Angular that we had before. And then you only need to have one render function to have your component there. And then it works. So with this one and this one, then you created a web component that is going to be closer to when we are using Angular, we are going to use a framework as a barrier between our component and the browser. And here we can create it just with taking advantage of the browser. We don't have any middleman in between, and we still have an element here. So this is, to me, is really powerful, and I really encourage you to follow up these two projects. I put a link to this video from Justin Finiani, who is behind the lit element and lit HTML. He works for Polymer team. So if you can see here, the reason that I used this screenshot is that you can see that inside your render function, you can even do error handling. You can load asynchronously a file, and then you can do the actual error handling there. And I say that, for example, the different states, if loading and you're missing the file name and all of those things, you can take care of it inside your render function, which is very powerful in my opinion. And the last part is the shadow part. Remember that I talked about that custom CSS properties? Imagine that if you have a component that's going to have 20 of those custom CSS properties, it's going to be really difficult to handle. To have, for example, one CSS variable for this, one CSS variable for that. If it is more than a couple of them, it's not going to be so useful. What CSS shadow parts does for you is going to let you to have, let's say that you have an xfoo component, then you can have a div that is say that I have a part, which is called some box, and inside that you can have an input. Your input is going to also have some name, and later on, from the component that you're hosting, you can say that go and find the xfoo, which has the part called sumbox, and put all the CSS that you want to have there. It gives you a flexibility to totally customize it in a manageable way inside the project that you want to. You can do it even for the hover of your box, or you can even do it for input. You can have a specific style for your placeholder. So it means that finally you can have inside your company, you can create a login page that is going to cover all of the different scenarios that you want. So your JavaScript, your TypeScript is going to be the same. Your template is going to be the same. But that your different team, they can have the CSS that they want inside that one. Remember how difficult it is to use Angular material to customize it, so that is going to be gone with this shadow part. Shadow part is still not totally finalized. It's going to be shipped with the Chrome, I guess 75, if I remember right. But this is a project that I'm so passionately actually looking for it, to have it. And so, yes, I would say that Web Component rocks, and Angular for sure, love Web Component. And you might say that, why even I need to have this Web Component even if I have only an Angular project? Because I hear that one from a lot of people, that even if I don't have many different projects, it's one Angular project in my company, why even I should care about that? My answer is that, first of all, I love Angular. I have a t-shirt as well. But you really don't know that what is happening in few days or a few years or something like that. So frameworks are coming and going. And every time that you want to go to the different parts, you have to rewrite everything. And it's smart to not do that. And then the other thing, the most important thing, that which I hope that Angular stay there forever, I don't want to see that Angular is going, but the code that you create is going to be way closer to the browser. We don't need to take care of the stuff that browser is supposed to take care of it. Just imagine that the input tag, that's also a custom element. Do we ever care about that, what is happening inside the input tag? No. We want to create those blocks that it has all the complexity behind, which is also taking care of taking advantage of the browsers as well. And then the code that we are writing, as you could see in the lit element, we are going to ship way fewer line of code to the browser, to the client. And you know that, yeah, sometimes when you create a web app, you don't care about it. But we also we are also creating progressive web app. We are also creating and the data is also pretty expensive, and not everywhere we have the good coverage. So we should really care about the line of code that we write as well. And we don't need to actually recreate the wheel from scratch as well. We want to let the browser take care of it for us. Yes, so I really want to encourage you to create your web components. You discover the new things, and then yeah, I guess that's enough. You know that how much I love web components. So you can always come and talk to me about web components. And my slides are there. You can have it in aks.ms/webcomponents Angular Athens. And I have a lot of resources there, as you can see, best practices and all of those things. And come to me, talk to me about web components. I also have a lot of stickers there. Thank you.